Thank y'all for being here and being a part of our service today. And we've been in this series called Better Together. And in this series, really what we're talking about is the value of the church. The church is a family. And because the church is a family, it provides some real essential things to our life. That the church is a place of rest. Families are a place of rest, right? That the church is a place of sharing. Man, we're in this together. That the place, last week we said that the church is a place of wisdom and impact. And today I want us to talk about this idea that the church is a place of support. The church is a place of support. And you know, the truth is right now, there's a lot of people that need support, right? With COVID-19 and the racial things and the political season, all that's happening right now in our culture. You know, stress and anxiety is at an all-time high. Marital conflict, domestic violence, all-time high. Substance abuse, drugs, alcohol, opioids have really spiked. Suicide, suicidal thoughts, those kinds of issues have really spiked. And a lot of people have lost jobs or they're stressed out about the insecurity of their job, the financial stress that can create in a family, just the economy being slow. Maybe you've got a job, but the slowing down of the economy has impacted your income and it's just created pressure and stress. There are so many people that are going through some really difficult things. And in those seasons, they need support. And you might wonder, well, what can the church do about that? And often we're trying to figure out how can the church fix it? And usually the truth is, usually the church can't fix it. That's not really the role of the church, but what the role can do is the church can be a support. The church can help a person walk through that season and learn and grow through it. The church can be a family. You know, one of the things as we've gone through this series that just I'm so grateful for is my relationship with Dr. Bennett, who so fathered me, and he was that place. He was family for me. But when I met Dr. Bennett, you know, the truth is he couldn't fix my broken marriage, and he couldn't fix that I was a seminary dropout. He couldn't fix my porn addiction. He couldn't fix my character problems, but he could be a family. And because he was family, the support that gave changed my life. In fact, Dr. Bennett's life verse, I love this verse, is in 1 Thessalonians 2:8. That says this: "We loved you so much that we shared with you not only God's good news, but our own lives too." So Dr. Bennett didn't just share with me the truth. Maybe more importantly, he shared with me his life, right? And that changed everything. That's what family's all about. That's what we're talking about this morning. So the question is, where do we find that in church? And one of the things that we've been wrestling with because of COVID-19 is this whole question of when are we going to meet again? And like all of you, man, I want to meet on Sunday mornings together, to worship together. I miss that so much. And I can assure you, we are working as hard as we can to get there as quickly as we can. We want that for everybody. But the truth is, the Sunday experience isn't where you get the support you need. Because the truth is, it's easy to show up on Sundays and get a spiritual fix, but hide in the crowd. Never really have to deal with my issues or the things that are creating so much anxiety, the struggle in my life. But in a small group, it's more difficult to hide, right? In a small group, those things usually come to the surface. In a small group, and we're going to talk about what this looks like this morning, in a small group, in that family, man, I can learn and grow so that those issues don't linger throughout years and years and years of my life. You know, when we come to church, it's so easy to show up in our Sunday best and to look like we have it all together, to look around and assume everybody else has it all together, when the truth is, in that room of good-looking people, there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of struggle, a lot of things we don't really even know and probably wouldn't guess or assume. But again, the small group is the place where we can take down the mask, where we can be honest and vulnerable. We can talk about our struggles, and we can find the support. We can find the family that we need. And that's what we're talking about today, is that the church, primarily through the ministry of small groups, provides support. So let me kind of touch on three things that small groups should do for all of us. And by the way, let me just mention this. A lot of you are already in small group, and if you're watching and not in small group, let me encourage you, join a group. And we actually have brand new groups starting in October. So you don't have to jump into an existing group. You can be in a brand new group. You can go to the app and kind of peruse the small groups and pick one, or you can email us and we will help you get connected. But get in a group. You say, well, Alan, why should I do that? Here's three reasons. Number one, small groups provide support. Again, what we've just said, small group provides support. The church should be a place that provides support to those who are struggling. And listen to me, people are struggling. I think we would be shocked if we knew how much the people around us, in our family, in our community, in our workplace, in our church, I think we'd be surprised how much people are struggling, and they need support. And that's really what a small group provides. I was thinking about some of the things I've been working on or looking at in my own life. I mean, this week I'm helping a couple in crisis. I'm helping a family in crisis. I mean, this past week I had a family member, close family member, who was diagnosed with cancer. Right now I've got one of my very best friends. His mother died this week and had her funeral. Pastor friend, another one of my very good friends is considering a career change. He's been in a particular ministry, and he's thinking about accepting a church pastorate. And Tina's mom just had major surgery, had knee replacement, and that's been a challenge. And even in my own family, me, Tina, and our kids, I mean, we've got some things right now that we're trying to work through, and it's been difficult. And I know if that's true for me, and it's true for all these people that I'm so connected to, it's true for a lot of people. People are struggling and they need support. For example, I called a pastor friend of mine. His name's Kendrick Benar, and he's preached here several times. He's the pastor of Grace Church in Chapel Hill. I called him yesterday just to be a friend, because last year he was diagnosed with cancer. They found a cancerous tumor right here on the back of his neck on his spinal cord, and it was creating some problems, which is kind of how they found it. And they've tried all kinds of things that really didn't work, and so he started chemo, and he's gotten halfway through, so I was calling to check on him. How you doing? Just wanted him to know, man, I'm thinking about you. I love you. I'm praying for you. I just wanted him to have an outlet to be able to share. He said, well, the doctor called Monday, and he said that right out of the gate, the doctor said, you know, you're halfway through your chemo. I've gotten all your test reports back, and the tumor is gone. And he said, right now, there's no trace of cancer in your body. And I mean, I'm just driving down the road, and I didn't know whether to cry or to shout. And I mean, I was just so excited to have an opportunity with a friend, just to be supportive. I can't fix it. I can't make it go away. Somebody else has got to do that, God or medicine, either one. But what I can do is I can provide support. And all of us are going through moments when we need support, and where as a friend, I can be present, and I can pray, and I can encourage. We'll talk about how to do that in just a moment. Maybe sometimes I can help or train or teach somebody out of my experience how to navigate the situation that they're in. I was thinking about that today, and you know, I've played golf for years. Tina's dad, when Tina and I started dating, he was a great golfer, scratch golfer, and we started playing golf together. But this year I decided, you know, I'm going to try to work on my game and make some improvement. I had some goals, had a couple of friends helping me that are really good at golf and trying to give me some pointers and show me some things, but at the end of the day, they can't hit the ball for me. And despite all the lessons, I have not made the progress that I was hoping to make. And life is like that. At the end of the day, people can provide training and they can provide support and they can provide help and they can provide counsel, but they can't hit the ball for you. Nobody can cultivate my relationship with Jesus for me. Nobody can build my marriage for me. Nobody can lead my kids for me. Nobody can work on my career for me, right? There are all kinds of things in my life. I need support, but nobody can do it for me. And so the church isn't trying to take responsibility for a person's life, but the church can provide support. I was thinking about that again from my own story. And I remember when I was in high school, my mother remarried in 5th grade. And my stepfather in high school decided to start his own business. And my mother quit her job, went into the business. They went all in. 2 years later, the business failed. They had to declare bankruptcy. They lost everything. My stepfather was so distraught by that after that, he abandoned our family. And so now we're in high school, my sister and I, single mom again, no job. She's bankrupt now. She's got this debt now. It was a mess. And at the time I was going to church, and the church I was attending did a good job of helping. They actually provided groceries on a couple of occasions, but they couldn't take responsibility for our family financially, right? It's not like they could start paying all of our bills. So they provided support, but they couldn't take responsibility. And finally, my mother said, I was a high school senior, and she found a place for my sister to live, and she couldn't keep our apartment and stuff anymore. So she actually went to live with a friend and said to me, it's kind of time to move out and to be on your own. And so Tina's brother and I, we got an apartment, and I was out and kind of starting. But even in that season, there was just a group of people that encouraged me and walked through it with me, that supported me, that prayed for me, that loved me through that season. And that's what churches do. That's what family does. In fact, Paul says this. You remember this verse? We talked about it. Galatians chapter 6, verse 2 says, share each other's burdens, and in this way obey the law of Christ. And you remember the word burden there is a load that's too heavy for any individual to carry. Paul's saying when you see somebody in your family, your spiritual family, and they're carrying a load that's too heavy for them, man, we need to give them our support. But then he goes on to say, I love the balance of this. In verse 4, he says, pay careful attention to your own work, for then you'll get the satisfaction of a job well done, and you won't need to compare yourself to anyone else. For we are each responsible for our own conduct. So sometimes I need support, but I'm still responsible for my own conduct, my life, my decisions, my relationship. But the family of God, our small group, the church, should be a place of support. Here's the second thing, is that small group can provide encouragement. Small group can provide encouragement. And maybe that seems so elementary and simple, but listen very carefully. This is so important. Everybody watching, listen to this. This is so important. Every person in your life needs encouragement. There are no exceptions. Every person you need would greatly benefit from more encouragement. That's true for everybody. In fact, I've never encouraged anybody and they went, you know what, Alan? I appreciate you saying that, but I get so much encouragement already that it's getting a little awkward. If you would keep that to yourself, I've got other people to do that for me. I've never had anybody say, I don't need any more encouragement. Anytime I've ever encouraged anybody, you know what they say? Gosh, I so appreciate you saying that. That means so much to me. And right, we know this from our own experience. When somebody encourages us, when somebody recognizes what we do, when they see the sacrifice, when they see we're trying to do the right thing, when they see how we love them or love some, when somebody encourages us, man, it's such a blessing. Everybody in our lives, They need more encouragement. In fact, when I think of, again, Dr. Bennett, the greatest thing he did for me was not teaching me to preach or even how to pray or even how to read my Bible, all that very valuable. But the greatest thing he did for me is he encouraged me because I desperately needed encouragement. In that moment, right, my marriage is failing. I'm a dropout. I've got these moral issues. I don't have any character. I don't have any family. I've got this awful past. I mean, my life's just a wreck. And yet in that season, Dr. Bennett began to say the craziest things to me. He started saying to me, I love you. And he started saying, man, you're going to be a great pastor one day. And he would say, I see something in your life that I don't see in most of the men I'm working with. He was saying those things before I'd ever been a pastor. When my life was a wreck, he was able to see beyond my problems and to see my potential and to speak into it. And it was, I don't even know how to explain it. Before we started doing this service, we were joking about drinking Red Bull. It was like drinking Red Bull. It was like, it just gave me this boost of life. Somebody believes in me. I'm telling you, everybody in your life needs to believe that. Everybody in our lives needs to believe that somebody believes in me. And I'm telling you, most people, if they were honest, would say, nobody believes in me. Everybody needs encouragement. Now, encouraging people doesn't mean we deny the truth. When I think about doing counseling, I'm not a counselor and probably not very good at counseling, but one thing I do is I just tell people the truth, so I try to take the gospel and apply it to their life and say, if you keep doing that, it's not going to work out, right? And so I want to be painfully honest sometimes, but at the same time, I want to encourage them to say, but man, I've been through that, and that was true for me too, and God met me, and you can do it, and you've got great potential. So I want to tell them the truth, but I also want to really encourage them and build them up and help them to understand that this does not define you, and this does not determine your future, that your best days are ahead. Everybody needs that encouragement. In fact, in my first church, it was a little town, about 1,500, Rose Hill down near Wilmington. And just gotten back in ministry. In the first year of our ministry, God was really moving. The church really, really grew. And I started, I made a couple of decisions that they seem ridiculous now, but were hard for people to understand. I bought a bunch of Bibles for all these new believers, and people were nervous that I didn't go through the right committee to do that or whatever. And there was somebody in a leadership role I had to remove because of a moral failure, but everybody else didn't know about the issue, and so they didn't understand why they were asked to step down, and I couldn't really tell them, and so that was challenging. And at the time, I was in seminary full time, and I was preaching Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and teaching Sunday school. I have no idea how I even pulled that off. And I was doing seminary. Well, the church had about 18 shut-ins. And the former pastor visited those shut-ins every week. And I was in seminary, and I'm preaching 3 times and teaching Sundays. I just couldn't keep up. I couldn't do it all. But there was a group of people that felt like I didn't care about the older people. Wasn't true at all. I just could not. I didn't have time to get it all done. And so that created some turmoil, and basically it led to us leaving that church and moving to Greensboro and coming to pastor Daystar. But in that season, it was really hard. And we had one friend. We had Ross and Stephanie Cavanaugh, who their home became our safe place. And we would go over there several days a week and just hang out. And they couldn't fix it, but it was a safe place where we were encouraged, where we knew that if nobody else, this couple believes in us, right? And they love us. And we just played together and ate together and did life together. And looking back, I've been at Daystar now 20 years. I'm not sure I'd even stayed in the ministry if it wasn't for Ross and Stephanie. That's the power of encouragement. The truth is, most of us, if we look back on our life, we could probably say, if it wasn't for that person, and there's probably several instances like this, if there wasn't for that person who in that moment encouraged me and believed in me and spoke into my life, if that wasn't true, I'd have bailed out. And everything that's true about my life today, this wouldn't be my story anymore. I'm so grateful for Ross and Stephanie, and I don't even think they were trying to do that. They were just trying to be our friends. And it was so encouraging. Listen, this is what the Bible says. I love these verses. Ephesians 4:29, one of my very favorite verses says this: let everything you say, boy, that's a high standard. Let everything you say, everything out of your mouth, be good and helpful so that your words will be an encouragement to everyone who hears. I love that. Everything we say, man, let's make sure our words are encouraging and building up people. We live in a culture today where it is so easy to be critical, to be judgmental, to use our words to attack and to hurt other people. Everything you say, Paul said, let it be an encouragement. Let it build people up. Let it strengthen and help people. Proverbs 18:21 says the power of life and death are in your tongue. I mean, so many of us, if we think about our own story, our lives have been profoundly affected, for the good or the bad, by the words of a handful of people. The power of life and death are in the tongue. Matthew 12:34 says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So when I am critical, when I am tearing people down, when I am attacking other people, the truth is, it's because I've never really experienced God's grace myself. And in my religious pride, I'm attacking everybody else that I think they don't live up or measure up to my expectations and standards. There's a better way. I love this verse in James chapter 3. Beginning in verse 5, James says this. He says this, in the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches. In other words, your tongue, your words, your mouth possesses tremendous power. Now watch what he says next. He says, the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole world of wickedness, corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it itself is set on fire by hell itself. Boy, that's scary. But you know what? The opposite can be true. So the opposite of what James just described can also be true. So we could say the tongue is a flame of fire, that it's a whole world of righteousness and blessing, that it is set on fire by the Spirit of God. I mean, what if that were true? What if we're allowing God to do this work in our heart, which fills our mouth with good news so that our words are a blessing and an encouragement for Listen, if we can set a fire, if we can create a forest fire of evil with our words, we can create revival with our words, right? So let's use our words to build up, to encourage, to strengthen people around us. Here's the third thing. Small group provides support. It provides encouragement. And third, small group is a place of grace. It's a place of grace. This is so important to understand. Is that even though the church provides support and encouragement, the truth is change takes time. And we struggle with that in church world. People show up at church and we basically in like a week want them to be changed. And real change does not happen in a week. Real character development does not happen overnight. In fact, one of my favorite leadership authors is a guy named Robert Clinton. He wrote the book, Making of a Leader. In his book, he has 5 stages of leadership development. He says on average, he believes it takes 25 years to go through the stages. 25 years in a leadership role before you're a level 5 leader. Not 25 days, right? Not 25 weeks. 25 years. Character development. When you think about Moses. Moses may be the greatest leader in the Bible. God sent him into the wilderness, not for 40 days to fix his character, but 40 years. Change takes that. Now listen, I can modify my behavior, especially my public behavior, when it's personally beneficial almost instantly. That's not what we're talking about. Real change, where my character, my heart changes, and so now my behavior is a reflection of what's actually happening in my heart. The truth is that takes time. And so we have to be gracious. And one of the things that's a challenge for all of us as mature believers is it's so easy to look at other people and go, what's wrong with you? And what's wrong with them is they've not been following Jesus as long as we have. And God has not had as much time yet to do in them what He's done in us. And God has promised, He who began a good work will complete it into the day of Christ Jesus. God's going to finish the work in that person, but it takes time. It takes time. When I think about my own life, let me prove this to you. Let's all think about, when was the moment when you decided to follow Jesus? Think about that moment or that season. When was the moment, when was the season you decided to follow Jesus? You became a Christian. You gave your life to Jesus. When did that happen? All right, everybody got that in mind? You got that in mind, those of you watching? For me, it was 6 years old. 20 years later is when my marriage was failing. I was a seminary dropout. I had a porn addiction. I had zero character. My whole life was a wreck. So I gave my life to Jesus at 6. 20 years later, it was a wreck. And then it took years for God to really put the pieces together and to grow my character and to teach me to walk with Him and all of those things. And I suspect for most of us, that's true. That we began following Jesus years ago. And unfortunately, in fact, this is maybe my greatest passion in church world, is to help people learn how to actually be with Jesus so that they can become like Jesus. And sometimes in church world, what people do is they give their life to Jesus, and then we give them a list of rules and we say, don't do this and don't do that. And they think Christianity is just keeping the rules, when Christianity is learning to actually follow Jesus, live in relationship with God, to live in His presence, allow Him to transform our lives from the inside out so that we can transform our world. That's what God's inviting us into. But it takes time. It just takes time. So you started following Jesus, but how long did it take before you broke all your bad habits? Maybe you haven't broken them all yet. How long did it take before you loved people that you don't like, who are attacking you? How long did that take? How long did it take before you developed a sense of humility? That you realized the world does not revolve around you, that your life even is not about you, it's about something bigger than you. How long did it take before you learned to serve? You know, yesterday was Serve Day, and I'm so glad that we had the turnout that we did. But the truth is, most of our church did not serve yesterday. And the question is, why is it hard for us to give half a day? It's easy to give half a day watching the NFL, but hard to give half a day to serving somebody in need. How long did that take? How long did it take before we learned to live generously, rather than only thinking of our own enrichment and spending all of our resource on ourselves? When was the day when we learned to give, that it's more blessed to give than to receive? How long did it take to learn how to have a meaningful connection with Jesus every day? And when I think about that list, the truth is, I'm not sure any of us are doing all the things on that list, which means I'm 47 now. Jesus has had 41 years to work on this stuff, and there's still work to do because change takes time, which means the church has got to be a place of grace where we understand that change takes time and we walk people through that process by helping them learn to connect with Jesus so that He can actually transform their life from the inside out, so that they're not just managing their image. Instead, they're cultivating intimacy and God is transforming their lives. I remember when I was a teenager, and again, my mother had remarried my stepfather's name was Jack, and for years, basically, I lived and had a tremendous amount of independence. My mother, she was working a couple jobs all the time, taking care of 2 kids, and which gave me a lot of unsupervised time to basically do whatever I wanted to do. And all of a sudden, she remarried this guy, and he's ex-military, and he's kind of got all these rules and real strict and structured, and it drove me crazy. And one of the things, he was real big on education, and I'll never forget, in junior high in particular, I was playing sports and really excelling there. Looking back, God was using that in my life to really keep me out of trouble in a lot of ways. But He was so critical of that. He was constantly telling me, you don't care at all about your education and your future. All you want to do is play games. He meant sports. And it's so funny. I had lunch with my sister yesterday, and it's so funny. Looking back, and I wonder what my stepfather would say today. I have an earned doctorate, and I've written my first book, and I'm working on my second book, and the things that he thought were true weren't true at all. But what he didn't understand is I wasn't going to write a book in junior high school. Right? I was just a kid and trying to, like every other kid, find my way and figure it out. And it took time for God to do that. Listen, the most rewarding thing in life is getting to witness the grace of God transform a person's life, but it takes time. I had this great experience 2 weeks ago. Let me tell you about it. I got to go to I don't even know what you call it. I guess you call it a release party. A guy in our church, Jody Petty, many of y'all know him. He's sung on our stage, been a part of our worship team for years. And Jody used to be a country music singer, traveled all over the East Coast, opened for all these big names, did a lot of big time stuff. But I've known Jody for 27 years. And 2 weeks ago, I got to go to his album release party and get to see him perform this new album for the first time. It was an amazing experience because when I met Jody 27 years ago, he was the man. He was this superstar, the best volleyball player I've ever played with or against, and just an incredible athlete. He was a professional model. It's like he had every guy in their early 20s looked at Jody and thought, man, I wish I could just be you. It was great. And then all these years, at the time, Jody really wasn't, he was a believer, but he wasn't walking with God. And fast forward 17 years, and one day I was preaching, and the service was over. We're waiting for the next service to start, and I look out there in the foyer, and there's this guy in a all-white suit, like Don Johnson, right? I'm looking at it, who is that dude? And I look a little closer, I realize, that is Jody Petty. And only Jody can wear a suit like that and pull it off. I'm like, what is he doing? He was in church. This was 10 years ago. And I got to watch over the last 10 years God do this incredible work in his heart and his family. And he gave up. He said, I can't keep singing this stuff in these environments because it doesn't line up with Jesus. I mean, it was a big deal. I mean, he basically left his career behind and started doing landscaping because he just couldn't do it anymore. 5 years ago, he began the process of doing his own album. And it's been a 5-year journey, and I got to be there the other night and listen to him sing these songs that are, they are really, really, really good. Wait till you hear this. And I got to hear him sing those songs and to share his testimony throughout this concert. And I sat there and I just couldn't help but cry about half the time because the story, the picture of God's grace is so beautiful. But it's a 27-year story, which required a lot of grace. And we just have to know in the church, on one hand, I'm not saying that we're passive and that we condone people's sin and we just say, oh, it's no big deal. You know, that's just how you are. I'm not talking about that at all. Because if we get a revelation of the grace of God, the truth is we want to live to please Jesus, the one who has shown us so much grace despite our sinfulness and wickedness. We want to live to please him. And we need a church culture where God's grace is transforming people's lives. And you can experience that in a small group. See, you can't really get that in the crowd because in the crowd, nobody knows your story. But in a small group, when people get to know you and they know your story and they know your struggles and they know your imperfection and they love you anyway, and you experience grace. In fact, I love this. I wrote about this in my book that hopefully will be available before too long. The reason Jesus hated hypocrisy is because hypocrisy keeps you from ever experiencing love. Because when you're a hypocrite, you're performing to earn the love of other people. But when they love you, you know it's not real because they don't know you. So it actually becomes a barrier to you ever experiencing love from God or anybody else. When we live an authentic life, when we are fully known and fully loved, that's grace and that transforms our life. And we need a church culture where people can be fully known and fully loved. And it's the power of God's love and grace that transforms our lives and leads us into holiness and abundant life. You can get that in a small group. See, we're a family, and families support each other. They encourage each other, and they are a grace culture for each other. And it's so, man, it really makes family the greatest place, the greatest thing in the world. And man, that's what we need for everybody. Now maybe today, some of you who are watching, maybe you've never experienced God's grace. Maybe in fact, the idea of grace is a whole brand new concept. So let me make sure you understand what that is. Grace is undeserved favor, undeserved blessing, undeserved goodness and generosity that God has offered, shared with all of us. That's grace. In other words, what I deserve is judgment and hell. What God has given me is love and grace, and it's transformed my life, eternal life, heaven, purpose, family. God's given all that to me, not because of anything I've done, not because I was good, not because I was religious, not because I worked hard. I've received all that by grace. This is what Ephesians 2:8-9 says when it says, you are saved by grace through faith. It's not of yourselves, it's the gift of God. It's not because of your works, so that none of us can boast in our works and what we did to earn God's favor. No, we didn't do anything to earn God's favor. God offers it to us freely. That is an act of grace. And if you're watching today, listen, the same thing is true for you. We all fall short of God's standard. The truth is, what we all deserve is judgment. But we serve a God of grace who has extended to us love. In fact, He's so radical in His grace that He sent His one and only Son, Jesus, who lived a perfect life, went to the cross and died to pay for my sin and yours so that we could have a relationship with God, so that we can receive forgiveness, so that we can experience His grace, so that for all eternity, we would be a trophy of His grace declaring the grace and the glory of God. But you have to make a decision. All that's true, but you have to make a decision to follow Jesus, to open your heart and receive that grace, to receive Him as your Savior and King, to receive His love and forgiveness. And if you're ready to do that today, man, I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to lead us in a simple prayer. Prayer's just talking to God. I'm going to give you an opportunity to say to Jesus, I'm ready to receive your grace. So would you bow your heads with me? Everybody watching, would you bow your heads? And if you're ready to take that step and to receive God's grace right where you are, pray this simple prayer. Just repeat this prayer to God after me. Dear Jesus, thank you for your love and grace. Today I receive by faith your forgiveness, your mercy, your grace. Thank you, Lord, for saving me. Help me, God, to follow you the rest of my days. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Guys, you made it to the end of the message. Great job. But this is not the end of your journey with Jesus, and we want to help you continue taking steps along that path. If you would, text definition to 97,000. It's going to give us a chance to connect with you and help you learn how to continue developing a relationship with Jesus, which is what we are all about. I also want to encourage you to share this message. You never know when somebody that you know might need to hear the message that you just heard. Last thing, guys, subscribe to our channel because we're constantly working to provide you with more resources to help you grow in your faith and learn to be with Jesus. Thanks again for checking this message out. We hope to have you back here soon.